There were no suspects, no bloody scenes, and no signs of foul play when Gene Hackman died in silence. All the clues have been lost in the desert, and Betsy Arakawa, the only person who knew the truth, has been following her husband around. It's possible that Hackman was killed in a secret plot, but every breath and footprint he left on the sand now turns to ash from rumors of poisoning, assassins, or the dark hand from meetings behind the odds. Hackman's death is more than just a funeral. It's the start of the darkest history that even Hollywood doesn't want to talk about. Los Teros, a small village in the middle of the New Mexico desert, has long been known as a haven for souls seeking to escape the limelight. For Gene Hackman, a living legend who twice won an Oscar, this was the last stop on a long journey of a man tired of camera flashes and nosy people. He and his wife Betsy Arakawa chose this part of the desert because of how desperately he could help protect women from some violence or be destroyed by films who had been on the intimate scenes of their excitement. Since the 2010 cess, Gene Hackman had almost disappeared from major news projects, turning down interviews and new projects to spend all of his time with Betsy, the quiet woman who had been by his side since they got married. Their two-story wooden house with windows that looked out over endless dry grasslands became an impenetrable fortress, with no guards, surveillance cameras, or high fences to hide them. People in Los Cerros rarely saw Gene Hackman. When he did go into a store, he would greet someone briefly and then quietly leave. Betsy was the same. They lived their lives like two shadows moving through each other's without making a sound. But this perfect peace turned into an endless void when police found that they had both died in their home, which had kept them from the outside world. There were no signs of forced death, no doors or windows were broken, and there were no signs of struggle or resistance. Gene Hackman's body was found on his favorite wooden chair near the living room window where he often read. Betsy was a few steps away with her head resting on the armrest as if she had just fallen asleep. Their small dog, a loyal friend, was lying at their feet, acting like everything was just a normal afternoon that went on longer than planned. The house smelled fine, and the furniture was still in its original condition. There was no noise. It was like the house had a layer of absolute stillness that froze in time at the very end. What puzzled the investigators was how natural the scene looked. There were no signs of outside forces, just Gene, Betsy, and their little dog, who were as quiet as the life they had chosen. The Santa Fe police called it an unexplained scene. At first, theories of break-ins or accidents were quickly thrown out, and there was no outside force on Gene or Betsy's bodies. They left in silence, as if even though Los Osos had taken them away without warning, the silence had never been so scary, because behind that complete peace lay a mystery that had yet to be solved. As the first rumors spread across Santa Fe, Los Osos was no longer as quiet as before. News of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa being found in their small wooden house in Los Osos didn't take long to leave the dry desert's borders and reach roadside cafes, old newspaper stands, and weekend markets. People in the area were used to whispering stories, but this time they were whispering the name of a famous person, Gene Hackman. She was once a movie star who made all of Hollywood tip their hats. No one knows where the first rumor came from. It could have been from a medical examiner leaving the scene of the crime, or from a neighbor who saw police lights through the window. But when they were spoken, they had the power of the desert, being silent but unstoppable in the dry landscape. The harsh winds of New Mexico gave rise to the first three theories: murder, intrusion, or gas explosion. For people who had lived in Santa Fe or Los Silos for a long time, the idea of deadly desert mysteries was nothing new. Since the 1970s, New Mexico had become known for mysterious disappearances, houses that were left empty because the owners disappeared without a trace, and bodies found without a single wound, but with eyes still filled with fear. This dry land by its very nature held stories that no one wanted to remember. When Gene Hackman's name came up in that context, the rumors quickly turned into a news storm. Was Gene Hackman murdered in his own home? The headline first appeared on a small blog but quickly spread when big newspapers like TMZ and even the New York Times got involved. Who would have thought that at over 90 years old, Gene Hackman would become the focus of such a truth-seeking mission? Santa Fe was used to reporters, but this time there was a different vibe to the air. News stories about local restaurants or beautiful landscapes, but news stories that were tinged with mystery. Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their beloved dog were left behind in a house with no signs of intrusion, violence, or cries for help. The Santa Fe police had to hold their first press conference that afternoon, in the middle of all the flashing lights. The police representative stood behind a wooden podium and spoke calmly but firmly. There were no signs of forced entry, no visible injuries, and no external trauma. The information was as short as a knife through all theories, but that clarity made people suspicious. If no one broke in and no one hurt them, then how could both Jean and Betsy, two healthy people living peacefully in that quiet place, have died at the same time? So the rumors spread. Some talked about an invisible intruder who specialized in breaking into desert homes and leaving no trace. Others talked about ancient curses connected to the land of Los Cerros, which was once a place where people met for rituals that no one dared name. And then there was the idea that gas was quietly leaking and killing everyone. It was also suggested that the most likely explanation was silence. But no matter what the theory was, no one could deny that Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, two people who had spent their whole lives avoiding the noise and gossip of society, had become the center of an unstoppable rumor storm in the endless desert of New Mexico. As the initial theories of a break-in or murder died down, the most likely explanation was toxic gas, specifically carbon monoxide, an invisible killer that had killed many people in remote areas like Los Osos. It was explained that everyone had heard of a silent leak that filled every room and put Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their small dog to sleep forever without a sound or any signs of struggle or panic. The Santa Fe Police Department's investigation team and environmental experts were quickly called in, and the most advanced gas detection devices were brought into G. Hackman's small wooden house to check every corner for the gas. The backup generator was carefully checked because it is a common source of carbon monoxide poisoning in remote rural areas. Interestingly, everything seemed to be in great shape. The gas stove, which was the main suspect, had a tiny leak at the connection to the gas supply pipe, but the gas that leaked wasn't dangerous and didn't build up in Hackman's cozy kitchen. The heating system was also carefully checked, with thermal cameras being used to look at each pipe, to look for any cracks that could let toxic gas into the house. The results showed that nothing was wrong, all the equipment met installation standards and regular checks. Some minor problems with the hot water pipes and gas connection had nothing to do with the carbon monoxide risk. The real shock came late that afternoon, when the preliminary autopsy report was sent to the chief investigator's office. There was no carbon monoxide in either Gene Hackman's or Betsy Arakawa's blood, lung fluid, or brain tissue. With no signs of gas poisoning, the most popular theory suddenly fell apart that same night. A press release from the New Mexico government said that no carbon monoxide had been found and that there were no environmental toxins present at levels that were harmful to human health. This news added to the rumors that were already going around on social media about what might have happened in that small house in the desert if it wasn't gas. New theories quickly came up, poisoned by another strong poison that was so sophisticated that it got around. It was either a slow-acting poison that was absorbed slowly through food or water, killing both at the same time like a curse. Some even talked about biological or chemical toxins used in high-level assassinations that could kill themselves after the mission was over, leaving the scene as clean as a sheet of paper from Los Cerros where the sunset painted the faraway Rocky Mountains. On every conspiracy blog, people kept asking, if carbon monoxide wasn't there, then what was? People thought about that question like it was a new curse for days, as theories grew crazier and the truth stayed buried somewhere in the desert winds. Gene Hackman was a famous actor who didn't need to be introduced. He was a living legend and a symbol of a Hollywood where real talent could shine through glitzy stunts. From The French Connection to Unforgiven, each of Hackman's roles was etched in people's minds. But behind the Oscars glow, in the 1970s and 1980s, when Hackman was at the top of his career, he also saw the dark sides of Hollywood that the media never got to. It was a time of secret parties, deals, and bribes behind the scenes. It was said that Hackman, with his sharp intelligence and eyes that saw everything, knew too much about bribery, behind-the-scenes favors, and even mysterious disappearances that were never made public when news of Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's sudden split broke. Hackman's death made the news, and some of his former co-workers were asked to share their feelings. Instead of condolences or nostalgic memories, most chose silence. Directors who had worked with Hackman on classic projects and thought of him as a golden collaborator all declined to comment. This collective silence sent chills down the public's spine, and a new theory began to form. Was Hackman really trying to avoid the Hollywood spotlight when he chose to live alone in New Mexico? Because of the secrets he kept, he had to leave the movie capital before the old shadows found him. Some conspiracy sites even talked about the Hollywood curse, which was a secret list of stars who knew too much and died in mysterious ways. With everything he had seen, could Hackman be the latest victim of this curse? The past secrets were never fully understood, and the old underground forces were still active. Gene Hackman's departure became a mysterious link between the glamorous light and the shadow. The truth is always hidden behind the velvet curtains of the movie capital. If Gene Hackman was Hollywood's light and shadows, then Betsy Arakawa was the exact opposite. From the day she became Gene's partner, Betsy retreated from the limelight and lived in quiet companionship like a shadow. The further she receded, the more mysterious that shadow became. Betsy Arakawa used to be a talented pianist, but since marrying Hackman, she had almost disappeared from the public eye. People remembered Betsy as gentle and quiet, always smiling softly when talking about her famous husband. But behind those smiles was a sense of unease that only a few close friends really understood. A few months before they were found in LWIO's house, Betsy told an old friend over the phone that she thought someone was watching her. She was hearing strange noises in the night and getting strange messages from unknown senders. She also had constant anxiety that had no basis in reality. When she was told to call the police, Betsy didn't. Even stranger was an anonymous call to the Santa Fe Police Department just hours after the incident was reported. The caller, a middle-aged woman with a soft, shaking voice, gave only one piece of information. Betsy wrote a letter to a friend in California that was her final confession, but that letter was never found. From this, rumors spread that Betsy had been in a complicated relationship with a man before she married Hackman and had tried to hide that history for a long time. There were also rumors that Betsy had secret ties to some powerful people, which may have been the real cause of her unfounded fears. Betsy Arakawa, the woman behind Gene Hackman's stage curtain, could have been the final key to unlocking all mysteries, but now she had entered the realm of silence, taking her secrets with her into the New Mexico desert night, where all confessions are buried beneath the sands of time. That's when Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's bodies were found in the New Mexico desert. The desert seemed to hold its breath, not because of the intense heat or the sandstorm that was sweeping across the trails, but because of an unnameable feeling that filled the air. A legend had died here, but what he left behind was not only a legacy of glory, but a mystery as big as the desert's horizon. When the first forensic reports came out, they made things even stranger. There were no signs of outside force, no obvious injuries, and no evidence of a break-in at the Hackman residence. Carbon monoxide or any common toxins were ruled out. Every clue that seemed to point to the truth disappeared like desert mirages in New Mexico. After weeks of investigations, the Santa Fe police had to admit they had not found a specific cause of death for Gene Hackman and his wife. The case remained open, but it seemed even the police had come to the conclusion that some mysteries were beyond science or common sense. The Hackman family chose to remain silent and turned down all interview requests and offers to work with the press. People who knew Gene Hackman in the past, like former co-workers and neighbors in New Mexico, kept quiet about his death. Hollywood, which had once praised him as a living legend, seemed to purposely leave G. Hackman's name out of memorial broadcasts. His death became a strange taboo subject, and every day more and more crazy theories and conspiracy theories appeared on social media. Some said Gan and Betsy were victims of a perfectly planned murder or suicide, while others thought they had actually committed suicide, been slowly poisoned over months with a strong chemical that would disappear once it did its job. Some forums go even further and say that the incident was connected to secret Hollywood groups that Gene Hackman had either accidentally or on purpose met. Each separate piece, from Betsy's fears to the strange calls from unknown people to the eerie silence of those who knew Hackman, all fit together to make an incomplete but compelling picture. The death of Gene Hackman was more than just the loss of a star. It was the start of a new dark legend, an unsolved mystery where the last glimmer of Hollywood's glory faded into the New Mexico dust, leaving millions of questions hanging in the desert sky, waiting for an answer. No one really remembers when Gene Hackman's house became part of the mysterious history of Los Osos, but ever since his and Betsy Araki's bodies were found, the space has been filled with an odd stillness that wasn't just the lack of people, but also the feeling of people who lived in this harsh desert area started talking to each other about what they had seen in the last few days, before everything came to light. An elderly couple who lived almost a mile from the Hackman house said they saw strange blue lights flashing through the second-floor windows. At first, they thought it was just car headlights from the trail behind, but the light didn't move or change, stood still, as if lighting a silent ritual that lasted almost 10 minutes before abruptly going out. A horse rancher who sometimes brought hay to the Hackman house remembered seeing Betsy standing on the porch a few days before the police arrived. She had her eyes fixed on the faraway desert and an unusually vacant expression. She didn't wave hello or respond to his greeting, she just stood there as if listening to a sound that no one else could hear. The Santa Fe police, after their initial official statements, also quietly withdrew from the case. There were no more updates or press releases after the temporary case closure. The lack of communication only made the silence scarier. Gene Hackman's family refused all contact, and people who had known Gene Hackman their whole lives suddenly stopped talking, as if they had received an invisible warning on online forums like Reddit and blogs that specialize in Hollywood conspiracy theories. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were no longer just the quiet couple of Los Cerrillos. They had become the new symbol of in a dark Hollywood, where the stage lights never shined. Hackman's life was shrouded in a thick fog. His roles, Oscars, and other honors were now just a frail mask hiding the mystery beneath Gene Hackman's house, which no one dares to enter because it's not for sale, rent, or demolition. As if it had become part of the legend itself. Every night, when the desert wind howls through the empty window frames, whispers of untold secrets can be heard from somewhere far away. Gene Hackman's story about being too close to the truth will continue to haunt New Mexico. There is darkness beneath the surface of silence and the dry official statements of the Santa Fe police. There are still puzzle pieces that never quite fit together. There was an anonymous call at 2:37 a.m. about 48 hours before Hackman and Betsy's bodies were found. Hackman's landline phone made an interrupted call to the emergency switchboard. A woman's voice whispered just 5 words, but the call ended quickly. It was too late to tell who made the call. Police later confirmed that Betsy did make it, but they couldn't say why the call was cut off or who they were. In Hackman's study, there was an empty safe with a large safe that hadn't been listed in any previous inventory of his assets. The safe door was wide open. No one knew what Hackman had kept in the basement, and there were no signs of breaking in. The unfinished manuscript, a handwritten book with scattered pages, was found in the basement, a place Hackman rarely went. It was full of scattered memories of Hollywood in the 1970s and 1980s, along with vague names like The Club, The Desert Meeting, and Red Folder. It seemed like Hackman had written this secret memoir for himself or for someone brave enough to read the rest. The manuscript abruptly ended with the sentence, "If they find out, no one survived." The deaths of G. Hackman and Betsy Arakawa not only ended 2 lives but also started a new chapter in the dark legends of Hollywood, the Hollywood Secret Society. After the event, many conspiracy forums thought Hackman had accidentally joined a secret society of politicians, film moguls, and actors. He was able to escape, but he carried secrets that would never be made public, which made at least 3 of them afraid. Longtime friends of Hackman's, including a director who worked with him on Mississippi Burning, quietly left Los Angeles after the police closed the case. None of them agreed to be interviewed, even when offered 6-figure sums. The haunted house. To this day, people who have been to the Hackman house area say they can hear the voice of Betsy or Hackman himself speaking in unintelligible, fragmented phrases that always repeat one phrase, "Not safe here." Gene Hackman's legacy is not just about her legacy. There are no Oscars or famous roles in Hollywood, but there is a shadow over the city where the truth is buried under the sand of the New Mexico desert, and not everyone who knows too much can live to tell the tale. Gene Hackman died in silence, but the event's effects were felt all over Hollywood like a sandstorm. Betsy Arakawa, the last witness, also died, sending a chilling message that people who know too much have no way out. This is the price of truth, where the stage lights never shine.